The LEGO Ninjago TV show is widely considered to have reached its peak in the brief stretch from 2018 to 2019, following the release of the feature film featuring the characters. This period, dubbed the Oni trilogy, followed our recast lead through a multi-season arc involving a number of dramatic twists and turns, and introducing arguably the fandom's best-loved villain. It had a storyline which focused not only on the show's usual kid-friendly adventure plots, but also high drama, intense stakes, and a more serious tone, which caught the attention of all viewers, old and new. The trilogy ended in a made-for-TV film split into 4 separate episodes. It concluded with an ethereal and touching scene featuring the near death of our protagonist, paired with a semi-conclusive ending to the show. This was the end of Ninjago, and the fans seemed content with where it had been left. Our characters had all received their own happy endings. They had faced the biggest threat the show had ever seen and came out the other side together, with a continued sense of adventure filling the air as the camera panned upward. The show, of course, would continue, the concept given over to a new animation studio who would carry on the legacy which so vaguely ended just a few months earlier. And as the fans tuned in to watch the new season entitled Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu, they were eager to see the storytelling which the previous seasons had so readily perfected continued, and they were met with this.
Cole's about to beat your high score!
Yeah, so, the reception wasn't great. The new show's first episode, unfortunately titled Wasted True Potential, was immediately matched with an intense wave of backlash almost universally. Everybody had a negative reaction, including myself. What happened to these characters? Last season was 80 minutes of content. I've seen 80 minutes of content from this season and it pales in comparison. That's what the first few episodes felt like. Woo's tea. That's not a good sign. I have this sinking feeling in my gut that Ninjago is dying. Holy cow! The next few episodes following the premiere were not received any better, widely being brushed off as pointless filler. A waste of screen time for a show which should be rushing to re-establish character dynamics, key lore, and side characters from the show's past. The shift from a 20-minute episode format to 10 minutes also soured the fandom. The change seemed to send the writers for a loop, throwing a wrench into the pacing and plot development. The season was a full 50% longer than usual, but the episode length kneecapped the momentum of every development that attempted to evolve. The first half of this new season, dubbed the Fire Chapter, was widely considered a derivative and childish mockery of the original show's now mature legacy. But by the time the second half of the season, the Ice Chapter, began to air, the vitriol had died down a bit. This section featured an ongoing mystery, higher stakes, and, most importantly, a slightly more dramatic tone. The twist, which closes the season, is perhaps one of the worst story decisions in the history of the show. It does have some decent competition now, though. And its last few moments decide to completely implode the development of one of its best side characters. But overall, the heart-wrenching side plot about the friendly Yeti monster and the amount of theorizing that this bit allowed the fandom to do seemed to leave people with at least a better taste in their mouth than what they started with. So, is the tone shift the primary reason for the backlash, or is there something else underneath the surface here? Well, not only do I think that the tone shift is the primary reason for the backlash, I think it's the only reason for the backlash. Don't get me wrong, this season is very messy. There's a lot to criticize. But I don't think that this season would be as hated, as dismissed, as unfondly remembered, as frequently skipped in watch-throughs if it hadn't come immediately after the Oni trilogy. Not only do I think that season 11 is not bad, but I, in fact, believe that season 11 is good. And of the two halves that we've been given, I even prefer the Fire Chapter. Now, I know that's largely a matter of personal preference, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on the beautiful storytelling and the long-lasting positive impact that these episodes have had on the show. There's a lot to appreciate about this season. In fact, I am prepared to say that the Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu despite having the most unnecessarily long title of them all, is in fact the best season of Ninjago. I'm just kidding, it's a total mess. But I do think it has some of the show's best moments in it, and I think it might even be my personal favorite season. I'm not super confident in that statement. Let's start with something that I think mostly everybody can agree on. The animation is definitely an improvement. The color palette and the textures all feel thought out and just a little bit nicer. Characters are more animated, facially and body-wise. The camera and the anime emphasis frames also add to the kinetic energy of it all. This all makes for great action, for sure, but I think it also really helps the dialogue scenes. It keeps you invested when they're talking about exposition that you might not otherwise be interested in. And just look at the lighting, the way their elements all shine. The skies, especially at golden hour, are always so beautiful. And the common use of fire as a light source. And the cinematography feels well thought out too. There's an increased use of split screen that I feel really serves the team dynamic. There's little touches just everywhere, like this vertigo shot at the end of the Traveler's Tree, or this framing of Lloyd in between all of the blades. And they even use the cinematography to help make jokes. Like, this joke works so well because of the way it's framed.
So we sneak in, like the crafty ninja we are.
It's a simple use of foreground and background, and it's effective. Something else I don't think anybody is gonna fight me on is that the score is fantastic. I could always feel myself getting excited at the end of episodes when we'd slam into the credits and the music would swell.
For this game, what a bust.
They're really effectively using themes from previously in the show, all while creating new stuff. I mean, the Paperboy soundtrack is amazing. The use of different instruments is really interesting, especially when we get to the Never Realm. And of course, maybe one of the most overused themes of the show, Zane's theme, actually being used and transformed in a really neat way at the end of the Ice chapter.
Ninjago is your home.
Ninjago.
Think, Zane. Try to remember.
And despite what old me was complaining about with the characters being different, I guess, there's a lot to like here. New stuff and stuff that carries over from the old show. The two biggest ones here are gonna be Lloyd and Kai. Now, Lloyd is just better in the new seasons. I'm sorry. He's got a well-defined character, and I like the bits that they're establishing here. He's a bit of a clueless good boy, and without focusing on all the baggage, he's allowed to be himself, which is great. In fact, this season actively makes fun of all of Lloyd's baggage. The new voice helps a lot, and though Sam Vincent's great at dramatic stuff, the comedy is my favorite, and this season gives him time to shine. He does a lot with the words on the page.
You say that like it's not weird!
Lloyd is a little more easily scared, but he's also more sensible than the more out there members of the team. He can share a well-earned eyebrow raise with Zane, and it doesn't feel out of character. He gets swept up in other people's opinions a little bit, but this helps in his leadership role. He's much more of a passive leader because he's so supportive of his friends. He's not the one coming up with ideas, but he's good at keeping up morale and keeping people focused. Lloyd also gets a lot of time to interact with Akita, one of our central side characters for the season. And I feel like their interactions really display what a child Lloyd still is. He is immediately distrusting in a very petty, catty way.
That's the way I'm going.
And then when they settle their differences, Lloyd describing his house like he's inviting a friend over to play.
We have a really cool monastery, video games, a hot tub. There's just these chickens you have to watch out for.
Lloyd is given a lot of characterization this season, and in my opinion, it's all for the better. Now, Kai is another character that I want to focus on here because a lot of people see this as the beginning of the downfall for Kai, which I don't subscribe to at all. Kai has a character arc about losing his powers, and while it's a joke now, and maybe it's not super original, it isn't necessarily out of character for him, and it's well defined, and it's followable, which is more than you can say for most of Ninjago's character arcs. Plus, Jake is cute. I like Jake. Kai loses his power, he feels worthless, but then he accepts his loss of power. He can have power even without literal power. But then there's this interesting dynamic that they add in that he finds a blame outlet. Sensei Wu is now the reason that his powers are gone. And then you have this thread of Kai actually getting his powers back. And I kind of like the, you need to get out of self-pity mode in order to find your talents and use them for other people, especially considering that whole thread of blaming Wu that we had in the fire chapter. Now, why Kai's arc decides to keep going after this, I'm not too sure. Really, Kai's powers should be fully back here, and that should have just been the end of it, but they wanted to draw it out to the end of the season because stuff has to resolve at the end, I guess. It's dumb, and they're trying to do, like, the exact same arc with Nia as well, so it's double pointless. But if you are going to continue the whole Kai thread, it does make sense for him to feel that he's letting people down. I don't like this part of the arc, but this little moment here is really well done.
I tried, but my elemental powers weren't strong enough.
And no, this season does not make Kai an idiot. I don't know where you're getting this from. Granted, all of the ninja are kind of idiots this season in a group sense, but there's nothing that's targeting Kai specifically. In fact, Kai is quite smart this season. Him shooting fire here is an example of him making a genuinely smart move.
Can you grab my shirt? I think so.
Take this!
And also, friends teasing friends about being dumb is not the same as the story saying that a character is dumb. Yes, shots are taken at Kai, but Kai gets to fire back. In this episode, Kai even sides with Lloyd in sticking to the plan, the correct move here. Kai is even the one that comes up with the final plan for the ninja in the climax. Granted, the plot kind of resolves itself before they arrive, but I mean, he came up with the plan and everybody else followed along and agreed that it was a good plan. There's also just some cute characterization here that's, really solid and shows that they're paying attention to his character. Kai being excited about snowshoes is so cute and I'm here for it. His Firemaster streak falls exactly in line with the cocky sort of impulses that we saw in like season 3. Kai being a total sleepyhead in this one episode is very cute and it makes him feel very human. And all of the other characters have plenty of great stuff going on too. Jay has this consistent little thread that I like where he messes up following Clutch's advice, and so for the rest of the pyramid adventure he is clinging to his advice for dear life. And also, Jay's smart too. This season doesn't kill his intellect either. Nia's frustration definitely carries over from the older seasons. She's a common sense powerhouse on the team, and she's easily stressed, which is shown in a couple ways, my favorite being this driving scene. They follow up on Cole's dad skills that were established in the Oni trilogy that he's now interacting with Crag, and he has these nightmares about letting down the team, which if you want to, you can even tie back to his insecurities when he became a ghost. He has this continuing fear of not being a useful member of the team. Zane, of course, is still insanely resilient and self-sacrificial, but on top of that, his visions are back. And Pixel! Oh my gosh, let's talk about Pixel. Pixel, my favorite love interest side character who gets to be a main character sometimes on the weekends if the story feels like it. she's back, and she gets to do stuff. Pixel is the only one not wasting her true potential at the beginning of the series. She saves the ninja from dying in a bunch of lava. She gets to interact with people other than Zane. The animation still forgot to give her pajamas though, so give Pixel pajamas. This season continues the Pixel might have powers theory, which I'm always down for. I know there's a Tommy tweet attempting to explain this, but I don't buy his logic. Samurai X is confirmed to be one of the most feared of the vigilantes, confirmed to be more powerful than all the ninja combined, and more wise than Wu in some instances. Pixel is just awesome. Regardless of what you think about the character's individual characterization, I mean, the group vibes are great. We open up and they're all supportive gaming buds, super found family vibes. This whole scene is pure gold. The scene where everybody's barging into Clutch's room is a great example of just some stellar character dialogue.
We need the second scroll of Forbidden Spinjitzu.
It is logical for you to comply.
Time for you to earn your keep, explorer boy!
There's this cute opening scene in An Unlikely Ally where the team has some banter. Like, I like this. Maybe the individual members don't shine as much as we're accustomed to when we have like a well-defined focus season, but it's clear that they wanted to focus on the team dynamic for this first reboot season, and I feel like that's the right call. And about that being a reboot thing, I think it respects the source material pretty well. People criticize this season for being similar to stuff that we've already done, but like, it's a soft reboot of the show. Starting out with snakes was a good move. You don't want to take a huge risk. You want to establish your roots in the old show and make room for the changes that you are making. Wu has a plotline where him messing up in the past has consequences in the present, and he has to like make up for it. People have been asking for this for a while, and it happened, and it's great. And there's just little things that it takes from the old lore, like seeing the Traveler's Tea tree is really cool world building and shows that they're paying attention to key aspects of the old show. But it's not all just rehash, it's doing a lot of cool new stuff too. There are so many things established this season that become core to the show going forward. The chicken, Clutch powers, the Explorers Club. We see the beginning of Zane's data obsession here, just beginning with reading books. The Paper Kids, along with the sort of like, this is fine status of the city, are really set in stone here. And of course, Fugidove. I'll bet there's at least one thing on this list that you like about this and future seasons, and it started here. But alright, all of that is great, but what about the big criticism here, huh? The tone of the show is just too goofy. Okay, the way I see it, all of these characters have a slider. On one end of the slider, they can be pretty serious, and on the other end of the slider, they can get pretty silly. Both of these states and all states in between on the slider are still in character for each of these characters. It is definitely possible to push outside of the slider's limits and break character, but there is wiggle room in between. The problem with season 11 is that we went from the far end of the serious side of the slider all the way to the far end of the goofy side of the slider in an instant. End of March of the Oni, wasted true potential. So no, I don't think this season is necessarily out of character for these characters, but the contrast is jarring. But if you aren't thinking about March of the Oni immediately before flipping on season 11, it becomes infinitely less of a problem. In fact, if you treat this as a sort of, I don't know, new starting point, a soft reboot of the show, you know, like it was, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to start at the deep end, you want to start light and fluffy to get people into the show. But Kit, I don't care about that. The jokes just aren't funny. Shut up, this is hilarious. Granted, not everything hits. Some of the humor is definitely geared a little more immature for my personal taste, but that is a thread that Ninjago has always had. And hyper-focusing on that is ignoring all of the hilarious stuff that this season does have to offer. We have everything. Actual setup and punchline jokes.
Ninja never quit. They never give up. Ever. Maybe we should just give up.
Funny line deliveries. Visual gags. I mean, it has the whole spread. Snake-tastrophe alone has so many solid jokes. The live ads, which implies that things change so frequently in Ninjago City that to be up to date, all ads have to be shot live.
These deals won't last forever!
The Serpent interview, point counterpoint, Esphira trying to be menacing while also not knowing how to use technology. So much great humor in one episode. Char is great.
Revenge in a minute.
And my favorite, ninja bad acting. We've got Zane pretending to be Clutch Powers.
I am here again, as I have been before.
The absolute worst with these imagined versions of the ninja.
Look! The famous Spinjitzu!
Cole's little puppet show.
Your days of evil are over.
Cole's nightmare.
Once you found it, you can be our friend again.
And of course, Lloyd trying to tell a story.
There's no Spinjitzu move for this.
Not to mention, this goofy tone also serves another purpose. The first couple episodes of the season, the ones that everybody hate, these are not just pointless fluff, they're a dissection of the tropes that this show is built on. It's meta commentary on the previous show to open up this new show. I think it's interesting. Wasted True Potential is about what if Ninjago's default heroes just didn't want to hero anymore. This is an action show about doing hero stuff. What if they didn't want to do that? What would the show be? Questing for Quests serves to analyze the point of the ninja. What if you have a hero but no villain? What are they doing that the police aren't? Are the ninja even useful? I mean, here they're failing to get a cat out of a tree. The ninja, so set on finding a villain to fight, end up creating a problem that they end up having to solve in the form of Esphira. Again, sort of a meta callback to the original inciting incident to the original series. Opening a tomb with a snake in it, except for this time, it's the ninja that are actually doing it themselves. I don't know about Clutch Powers in other media, and if you don't like his portrayal here because of that, that's fair. But if we're treating him as a new character here, I like it. The adventurer who doesn't adventure because adventuring is dangerous, why would you ever adventure? What is the point of this show? Why would you do any adventures when adventures are so dangerous? Again, because the ninja choose to go on an adventure, they end up creating a huge problem that takes the rest of the season to resolve. And they made this intent clear with the increased frequency of meta jokes. They're scattered throughout the season, but there's a lot of them in these first couple episodes. The acknowledgement of the ship model, the ninja coming up with fake woo quotes, even this scene where Zane is jumping into the mouth of a giant creature, maybe sacrificing his life, is poking fun at the trope that Zane sacrifices his life so many times. As evident by the smirk on Zane's face, he's messing with his teammates, and he knows he's doing it. But it's not just meta stuff. The Fire chapter can do normal storytelling too. Like this scene, it's the very end of A Rocky Start, one of those filler episodes. There's like legit stakes and tension built through the storytelling and the cinematography and the sound design here. Like it's just well done. In fact, there's a comparable moment in season 8 of the Oni trilogy at the end of episode 7. In both scenarios, the ninja are on a small area and are being encircled by a large dangerous creature. And honestly, I think season 11 pulls it off better. It is just communicated better, it feels more stressful, it is just good filmmaking. They did a good job here. Similar thing with the Esphira prison scene, it's just well done and captivating. I also like how the beginning of the chapter starts with the ninja trying to fight Wu, and failing, and the end of the chapter has them fighting Wu and defeating him like very easily. It's a clear way to show character progression. It's a nice little cyclical button on the end of the chapter. And yes, okay, I'll talk about it. The pacing is bad. The pacing isn't great. In fact, it's probably the worst thing about the season. They did a bad job with that. So that would be a correct observation there. But I don't know, I'm gonna try and explain why it doesn't super bother me. It's not that they wanted to get the plot rolling immediately, but then they failed at that and it just kind of felt like it dragged. I think they didn't want to start up the plot immediately. They wanted to have a little buffer period. And you may disagree with that decision, but it doesn't mean that they executed poorly on what they were attempting to do. And this slower pacing definitely doesn't work well for the week-to-week release schedule that we had this season. If your little bit of Ninjago for the week is the first 2 episodes of this season, and you were expecting, stuff to happen, then this is definitely a disappointment. This season plays a lot better when you binge it straight through, because you don't necessarily feel like you're owed a huge plot development every week. The fun episodes that don't really matter just come off as fun episodes rather than a waste of your time. But again, that's you expecting the plot to jump right into things. This season very clearly wants a slower pace to start so that they can set up all of the different moving pieces that they'll have throughout this season and the future of the show. It's hard, because pacing is kind of subjective, and personally, I don't mind that we're focusing on like a lunch break. Like, that's my speed. But yes, by all modern television standards, this season, especially the fire chapter, is just paced weirdly. It's way too slow in the first half, it takes way too long to feel like anything meaningful happens, and it's not what audiences would be expecting coming into this. They were not effective at using the pacing to communicate to their audience what it was they were trying to do. They did a bad filmmaking, but removed from the context of the show, I think the decision to start out with this slow meandering sort of pace doesn't not make sense. I get that these explanations aren't necessarily going to change a lot of people's minds, but at the very least, I hope maybe you can understand why it doesn't bother me and maybe some other people. Personally, it's a lot harder for me to overlook the plot problems that the ice chapter has than the pacing problems that the fire chapter has. And I think I'm extra likely to cut the writers some extra slack because they're working with the new 10-minute format for the first time after doing 20 minutes for years. And that's another thing. The runtime change affected a lot, including stuff like the intro. The new title format without the whole previously on Ninjago followed by the character intros is disappointing, but I get why it's necessary, and it does get more stylized in future installments, so that's good. Additionally, as a trade-off, we get like different characters saying the title of each episode, which helps spread out the focus a little bit, and I like that. I really can't get over how useless the like auto-generated slideshow recap is, though. Honestly, instead of trying to preserve the previously on Ninjago segment, they should have kept the character intros, because that's just more useful information. But the runtime change isn't all bad. Because of this, we get some really fun one-off episodes. When your block of content is 20 minutes and you only get like 10 a season, you can't dedicate a whole one of those to a side plot that doesn't matter. But when your episode length is halved and your episode count is more than doubled, you can definitely spend some time going down some smaller rabbit holes. Now, Dragons Rising, the sequel show to Ninjago, is returning to the 20-minute format, and I think that's a good thing for the overall storytelling of the show, but I am really sad that we are going to be losing the one-off format. We've got 4 more standalone episodes this season. There's Paperboy, which is a great character study that I think everyone loves. Snake-Tastrophe, a non-stop joke machine that really humanizes Ninjago City. The Absolute Worst, which is by far the best use of the 2D animation style in the whole show. And Kaiju Protocol, which I mean, it's a Pixel episode. I'm gonna love it. Do they always fit tonally within the season? Definitely not, but screw it. I'm glad we have them. I mean, within the episodes, it's great content. And let's talk about Asphira. A lot of people tend to not like Asphira, and I don't know where you guys are coming from. Asphira's great. You guys are just mean. Her voice is so silky.
The traitor! The one who imprisoned me for thousands of years.
The whole, like, explorer pyramid aesthetic is not something that the show has done before, so it is kind of a unique take on the whole snake villain aspect of the show. Asphira's backstory has to do with like being wronged in her past, and there's this little twist that it was Wu who wronged her. He was the deceiver. I like this little twist reveal. I think it works. The characterization that we see from young Wu definitely matches the character that we saw in season 9, and Spinjitzu being central to the conflict of the first season of this reboot feels right. And people say that her motives don't really make sense and are too one-note.
Revenge!
But I definitely disagree. Like, yeah, sure, they aren't like strictly logical, but for a self-centered manipulative jerk, her actions fall in line 100%. Like, I did this one nice thing for you, and so I am entitled to anything and everything from you, and anything you keep from me is a deep and cutting betrayal, is absolutely a valid mindset for your villain to have. Honestly, if she was locked in this tomb for like thousands of years while conscious, which it is implied that she was, it honestly makes the one-note obsession make a lot of sense. Also, it maybe makes me want to side with her a little bit. Like, if that was her fate, then yeah, maybe Wu should have tried a little harder to get her out of the immortal torture sentence, even if she is evil. Now, is she the best villain of the show? I mean, maybe, honestly. One thing's for sure, she's definitely better than the Ice Emperor. I don't know, I don't really vibe with the Ice Emperor, you know? Maybe it's the voice.
Why do you disturb my thoughts?
Or maybe it's like just the design. It's all a little closed off and one note. He's not really menacing to me. He's got this advisor who's kind of the real villain of the season, Vex. And I don't vibe with Vex either. The ice mustache that he has, it's so distracting. I can never stop looking at it. He's also not intimidating. His voice is also sort of one note. Okay, he does have like one good line.
Hail indeed, brave Grimfax. Tell us of your great victory, for you left with so many more samurai than you brought back.
Burn. Ice burn. Burning. Ice burn? Burn from... There's a name for that, right? Anyway. Also, I can't unhear this Shawn Mendes edit that I made of him at the time.
You will wish you had treated me better.
I know I can treat you better than he can.
But that's just a me problem. So, like, what is going on with the plot of the Ice chapter? Like, yes, it is definitely paced infinitely better. The progression works and feels like it hits beats that it needs to hit when it needs to hit them. But the logic between those beats is iffy. So at the very end of the Fire chapter, Zane gets sent to the Never Realm, and so the ninja follow him to go and try and find him and bring him back to Ninjago. That's the whole thing, that's what's going on. And the original plan was that Wu was gonna go by himself, but then the ninja were like, no, actually we're going instead. But then it's revealed after they leave that, oh no, the magical tea that they have to get back home actually isn't enough to get back home. Which then raises the question, what exactly was Wu's plan then? His was the exact same, except for it was just him going instead of everybody else. And if he knows that that tea isn't enough to get him home, then how was he gonna get home? Why was he even planning on taking the tea in the first place if he knew it wouldn't work? So yeah, the proposed Wu's plan makes no sense. But the ninja, as they go to the Never Realm, also have zero plan. Cole, in this realm, which had been described to him as very cold, and also which we later learn is so cold, in fact, that fire doesn't start in this weather. Cole is wearing a sleeveless ninja gi.
I'm so cold.
He didn't bring a jacket? He didn't think to maybe bring a jacket? You know, maybe he left his jacket in the land bounty before it fell off a cliff. And this keeps up the whole season. He never gets a jacket. How in the heck is he not dying? He would have hypothermia so many times over. I'm sorry, it's so distracting the whole season. By the way, the too cold to start a fire thing, that's not how fire works. That's not how physics works. Also, I'm pretty sure if you swing like an ice axe at a fire, it doesn't like put out the fire. If anything, it might melt the axe a little bit. How fire? Ninjago, how fire? And as I mentioned earlier, the two main like character arcs that we have this season are with Kai and Nia, who both lost their powers and are trying to get them back and have to talk with Sorla, who is a mentor figure this season, about finding inner strength or something, and then it doesn't work, but then they rage out and it does work. So I don't know why we're doing the same plot twice right next to each other. And at least with Kai, the front half of his arc does make sense. With Nia, I'm not sure what the point of any of this is. Sorla tells her that she just needs to believe in herself, and so she tries even harder, but it doesn't work. But then in the climax, she thinks about it and she's like, I am the water ninja. And then she like moves the ice because she goes rage mode. And so the thing that she needed to learn was that she is the water ninja. It feels like it hits the beats of a character arc. I'm just not sure what the character arc is. And of course, the Ice Emperor twist. So Zane gets sent to the Neverrealm. The ninja follow shortly after in order to find him. They discover that in this land there is a villain called the Ice Emperor who has been ruling over the land for decades and which they must defeat to get Zane back. The twist is that Zane is the Ice Emperor. They try and make you think that this like prisoner is Zane, but it's obviously not Zane, so I don't know why they put so much effort into it. I mean, the cinematography is nice in this scene though. But putting aside how utterly predictable it is, the thing that drives me absolutely up the wall about this twist is that they refuse to explain it. The main thing keeping the audience from coming to the conclusion that Zane is the Ice Emperor is that the Ice Emperor has been in rule for decades. According to a clarification tweet from a creator of the show, 60 years. And the way that they resolve this logical contradiction is that they don't. They literally bring it up in narrative and refuse to explain it.
What about the time difference? How do you explain that?
I can't.
I kid you not, this reveal is so dumb that it has its very own somehow Palpatine returned moment.
Somehow, Zane is the Ice Emperor.
It was clarified after the show had aired that Zane, when he was blasted into the Neverrealm, was also blasted 60 years into the past. Why Asphira did this, I don't know. I don't think the writers know. If this was the intended explanation for this twist, then why the heck wasn't it in the show? You could add a line that would explain this, but they didn't, so it just remains unexplained. This is like the sloppiest storytelling I've ever seen. This is like if in Star Wars, when it's revealed that Darth Vader is Luke's father, and Luke is like, how is that possible? I thought my dad was dead. Obi-Wan was just like, yep, he is. And Luke would be like, but I thought that Darth Vader is my father and he's alive. And Obi-Wan was just like, yep, Darth Vader is your dad and your dad is also dead. And Luke was like, how is that possible? Is he a ghost? Is he like, this doesn't make any sense. And Obi-Wan was just like, yeah, I don't know. Somehow Darth Vader is your dad. Additionally, the way in which our characters find out this dumb twist reveal that they can't explain is also dumb. The way Lloyd finds out is fine, but the ninja see that this dragon is made of ice, and so realize that the person who made it must be an ice elemental and that Zane is an ice elemental, so it would make sense that he is it. But also, they've been fighting warriors made entirely of ice that they've commented on are made entirely of ice.
Some of them are frozen warriors, others are just ice.
All season long. So I don't know why this dragon makes any kind of a difference. And the way that they bring Zane back from being this evil villain is that he overhears not even one of his friends, but his advisor, Vex, say protect. So which implies that nobody has said the word protect in front of Zane for 60 plus years, which, I don't know, I find unlikely, especially for a guy who commands an army. The whole time difference thing also presents some interesting things for our side character, Akita. She has a flashback scene before the long winter that the Ice Emperor started, and she is like a kid. And she seems to be like a teenager in present day and is now taking revenge for the supposed death of her brother in that flashback. So it's been 60 years, but she's only aged like maybe 5? Well, maybe like the long winter she's talking about just happened like a couple years ago, even though the Ice Emperor has been in power the whole time. I guess that's possible. No, we have a clarifying tweet saying that 60 years did in fact pass between the flashback and present day, and formlings just age differently. So did Akita just wait 60 years to take revenge? For as much as I'm complaining, there's a lot that doesn't make sense, but the Ice chapter is still totally awesome. Akita has narration at the beginning and the end of the chapter, which is not really something that Ninjago's done before, and I think it really gives this separate chapter its own unique vibe. Sorla's amazing. I want to have brunch with Sorla. And Akita starting out as a wolf who befriends Lloyd and then eventually reveals herself to be a human. I really like. The mysterious helpful animal trope is a good one. Red, which is what Lloyd calls Akita while she's a wolf, is actually like a fairly well-developed character on her own, which is honestly pretty impressive. She saves Lloyd's life a couple of times. She visibly sympathizes with him as he's watching this video of Zane. And I'm all for Red being absolutely done with Lloyd's trauma. We start out one episode with this nightmare sequence from Cole. It's a memory that's been altered, and so everything's a little bit different, and I like the tiny little changes that they've made. The first time I watched this, I was like, did I accidentally put on the wrong episode? I've already seen this one. So like, there's a little bit different, so if you're paying attention, you will pick up on it, but also it's close enough. It's a well done sequence. There's this adorable little ice fisher kid who calls Cole Mr. Ninja.
Mr. Ninja. Nothing. I'm okay. You look like you also have a problem, Mr. Ninja. Bye, Mr. Ninja. Good luck.
There's also this cute little side plot with Crag, who's this Yeti monster who appears to be dangerous, but is actually like helping the ninja. And we learned that like his whole family was massacred by the Ice Emperor, and it's this really like genuinely sad, touching moment. Also, look at his smile. Akita has a very well, solidly told backstory, and her motives diverge from our protagonist, Lloyd. Even though she is a side character who sides with him, their goals in the end are fundamentally opposed. She wants revenge on the Ice Emperor, and Lloyd wants to save Zane, who it turns out is the Ice Emperor. Kataru, her brother, who was supposedly killed but is actually alive. He's like a bear. That's cool Cool Bear. Corruption is a flashback episode where we get to see Vex's perspective on Zane first coming to the realm, and I really like the intrigue of all of these different pieces falling from the sky before Zane falls down. And yes, at the end of the season, Akita ends up kissing Lloyd, which is not great because there hasn't really been any romantic tension built between these two, and it kind of reduces her to love interest at the last possible second, and that sucks, but I don't know, I'm maybe gonna try and defend it a little bit here. In Akita's closing narration, she says that she thinks she's going to see Lloyd again. Now, this never actually happens in the show, but if it was the intention for Akita to come back in future seasons and possibly for their romance to develop, then it is actually pretty cool that the kiss happens right before Lloyd leaves. It's not them just being like, oh, and she should kiss him, cause girl. It's them planning long term to have a love interest and choosing not to introduce her as a love interest. Now, is that actually what they intended? I don't know. Probably not. 'Cause you're hot, then you're cold, you're yes, then you're no. Now, I know this video has been a lot, and again, maybe some of your minds just aren't changed. You don't like season 11, you especially don't like the fire chapter because it just leans too far into the goofy zone for you. You were watching a show with a mature storyline that you thought was maybe even catering to the more adult fans of the show. And you can't forgive season 11 because when it started, the show became a little baby show that is overly childish. Well, yeah. It's a kids show. You're watching a kids show. That's what it's supposed to be. Are you ashamed to be watching a kids show that's aimed at kids? If it gets too goofy, are you gonna feel self-conscious about liking it when the little Lego toys jump around? Do you need a terrorist betrayal plot that leaves your protagonist fatally wounded to feel okay about your viewing habits? Cause I don't know, I think maybe you need to get over yourself a little bit. Good kids content is still worth watching, even if it doesn't have any mature themes. A lot of people tend to deflect from the very poorly thought out, well, it's just a kids show argument meant to devalue the worth of the content by saying, well, no, actually, the show is pretty mature and has some deeper plot lines and a lot to offer adult viewers if you just dig a little bit. But the actual response should be, who cares? Who cares if it's a kids show? Kids content is still an art and still deserves to be watched by audiences of all ages because the messages and the morals that they have are made to be fundamental to everyone. Ninjago could have 0 adult themes anywhere in its run, and I would still watch it because having the ninja learn that friendship is actually the most important power of them all will never get old because it's cute and it's resonant, and it's true. You cannot tell me that that is not valuable. Now, I'm not dismissing the show's more mature seasons. They are expertly done. And all those posts explaining why Ninjago is actually like super deep and dark and mature and like, how is this even a kid's show? are all great and valid and probably right to some extent. That emotional depth, when done right, turns out fantastic content, which is definitely worth celebrating. But that impulse to make the show seem darker and cooler and more mature, especially on the adult side of the fandom, subconsciously ties the show's worth to those qualities. And that's just not how quality works. Yes, the tone of season 11 is a little bit silly, but that isn't a bad thing or a good thing, just like a serious tone isn't a good thing or a bad thing. They're just things, and you can have poor execution on either side of the spectrum. Now, season 11 isn't the best execution of the goofy side of the spectrum, but I don't think it's that bad. I think a lot of the flack that it's getting is just because it is on that goofy side of the spectrum. And you know what? I personally would prefer that the show lean goofy, because you know what happens when the show starts to buy into its own hype and take itself just a little too seriously? Crystallized. Crystallized is what happens. I like the out there episodes of Ninjago. The ridiculous adventures are often my favorite. The eccentric villains appeal to me a lot more than the emotionally driven ones. Kai's goofy moments hit me a lot harder than any of his supposed dramatic beats. The group seasons play a lot better to me than the times when the show tries to dial in focus. I do not value adult qualities in my Lego Ninjago experience. And that's a matter of personal preference. I get that. And you don't have to agree with that. But I also don't think that it should be seen as a negative or an incorrect thing. I don't think this season is a negative thing. It's fun, and I invite you to try and have a little fun. At the end of the day, I feel like, on some level, if you are tuning into Ninjago and you're not willing to see these guys just kind of tease each other, eat lunch, and fail to defeat the villain just out of pure incompetence, all the while being riddled with plot holes and writing issues, that's kinda on you. 'Cause that's like most of the show. I even prefer the ice chapter, the fire chapter. Man,